Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar. We have a very special treat because this month we have two webinars going on. Today is the prerequisite for next week's webinar. This topic has been chosen specifically by you and for you. It's about regular expressions and capture definitions. And for today, we're going to be discussing capture definitions as well as node properties to build a foundation for our next week's training. My name is Georgia. I will be your trainer today. Next week, we're going to have a fun guest come and speak to us as well, who has been working with Mozenda and developing Mozenda for quite a few years. Our purpose for today, though, is to refine data in the building process to minimize post-data processing of our data. And like I mentioned before, this is going to build a foundation for next week's lesson on regular expressions. Recently, I was asked to build an agent, and when I went to export my final data set, it looked a little bit like this, which isn't something that excites me. This is data that is not very clean and not very readable. There's missing a lot of data, so that to me means that I need to set up some different handling so that I'm notified if there's an error or if I'm missing data. I want to have something that is more readable and more robust so that I can actually digest this data and have it be helpful to not just me but other departments. And if I did get maybe excess data and I needed to clean that up, something that I want to do is make sure that, one, I am creating data that is digestible. Two, I'm minimizing any post-processing work on my side and making sure that if I do hit an error, that it's something that I have asked it to hit an error on, whether that be formatting, whether that be a specific number that I'm looking for or a specific word. That type of information is so helpful for me because then I can create a beautiful data set at the end. So we're going to be talking about how to create that inside your agent. Because if we add these rules in our set of instructions, then it's going to be an overall better experience when we're working with our data when we're finished. So for example, when I'm trying to capture an address or a phone number, there may be a specific format that I'm looking for to match that format. And when I select this information, I want to specify what that looks like. And there's two ways we can specify what type of information we want or define or reformat our data. One is called node property, and the other is called refine capture text. To use node property selector, this is a feature that I specifically have used in the Chromium builder. So if you have not switched to the Chromium, it's like the Tesla of all agent building. I'd encourage you to do so. There's some steps on how to make that switch on the Help Center. But to understand how to select or redefine those pieces of information, we're first going to talk about node property. There's so many different ways to do the same thing in Mozenda, so finding what works best for you based off of either your experience or the result that you want to have will be really important. So with node property, or with any of these, refine capture text or node property, it allows us to add or remove text. These may be more specific to refine capture text. It allows us to specify certain formatting, capture a URL, find hidden text and have that be visible, or define a capture. And for our node property, we first need to understand what a node is. A node is an element an attribute, a text, or any other type of node that's in the HTML. If you want to learn more about that, there are some great articles on w3schools.com. This will explain different nodes and what their purpose is when it comes to a web page. So understanding what that that a node is part of the HTML, and it can mean different different pieces of the data as we're going through it. So in this example, I have this common node, which is href. I have inner text, outer HTML, and text content. By default, Mozenda is going to present this value of the inner text. I can switch to an attribute or an inherited piece of, or an inherited node to select that as my view and my final export. Based on the location of where you've selected in your HTML, nodes, different nodes will be visible for you to select. So if you're not finding what you're looking for, you may need to select a different part of the HTML. I like to say, like, XPath tells you where to get the data, and node property, regular expression, and capture definitions tell you what type of data you want to select from that piece of information. I'm going to show you a couple examples of when you can use node property when you're capturing a URL, if something's hidden, or if we need to change the format. So let me pull open. I have this example here with Best Buy. We have some really good information here. I know that we have our colors listed. I have my product as well as this model and SKU number. So inside the builder, I'm just going to open up, saved you guys some of the busy work. I've created an agent to collect the beginning sides of this. So I was able to collect the phone name, the phone image, as well as the reviews and the price. So right now, my capture preview looks a little like this. There are still some pieces where they don't have the model listed on this front page, so I could potentially get that in the second. In this example, I really want to capture the URL so that if anything hits an error while I'm running my agent, I want to be able to track that URL down and be able to load that one specific item instead of having to rely on searching for that specific item in Best Buy and then selecting it. When I inspect the title, because when I usually click on the title, it goes to the next page, there is a tag that has the URL in it. I see the URL is here, and I'm hopeful that my phone capture, when I captured the name of it, also includes that. To make sure, I'm just going to click here, capture text again. I'm going to title this URL. Now that I have my URL captured, I'm going to right click, go to properties, and now my node property selector is available for me to choose what I want to have displayed. Right now it's just displaying the URL, the title of the product that matches the title that I've already selected. So I'm going to select which node I want to view. When I click that, it shows me this href, inner text, outer text. I could go down to the attribute, but right now we're going to choose the URL, press OK, and save. So now I'm not only able to capture the title, but I was able to capture the URL pretty simplistically. And so that now I can not only have this to troubleshoot, but I could potentially add this as another action inside my agent. If I wanted to load that onto a new page, now I already have the URL selected and can add that as an action. let's test our agent. And while it's testing, we'll see how we'll get some results there. Let's jump back in to so another technique of how to capture that same information. We're going to be using the node property selector to capture content that is hidden behind maybe images that will be helpful to us. There's 100 ways to do one thing in Mozenda, and which is really, really nice. We're going to be talking about this Refine Capture Text tool. Refine Capture Text is a more granular way to isolate the data that you need. Refine Capture Text can be used to define what's going to be captured, whether it's in text or HTML, or it can be for contents replacements. There's a few ways to refine capture text, and we'll be discussing how we can use predefined or canned definitions versus capture field techniques. The basics that we're learning today will be transferred and translated into regular expressions for next week. So as we go through, if there's specific questions that you have related to regular expressions, or you have specific questions related to refine capture text, please feel free to chat in those questions, and we can answer them along the way. With refine capture text, there's some really valuable help articles. If you want to do something similar to catching that URL, we have that available, or how to reformat information. But to access refine capture text, there's some helpful ways to get to this position where you can modify what you're seeing. When I'm able to open up refine capture text, I can either click on the capture action specifically and right click, select refine capture text, and this window appears. I can also select refine capture text up at the top. Refine capture text has 3 different sections. This first section is content. We have our capture definitions and our capture text preview. The content shows me which text is actually being found, whether that be the text view or the HTML view. Our capture definitions is defining what specifically how is showing me how that text is being found. So this expression with the 2 percentage signs is my field name. And it's saying anything that's selected or highlighted is going to be my product. The capture text preview displays the text based on the definition that I have listed here. Right now we're on capture definitions. There's also a section for contents replacement. When it comes to contents replacement and capture definitions, there's a lot we can do as far as defining what we want captured. For example, we're going to begin with reviews. My reviews in my results have parentheses, it has a comma, and I just want this to be text. So to change the format of that, I'll right click, go to refine capture text, and I'm going to select content replacements. This second section for contents replacement is how I'm going to define what I want. So I'm going to select a new text replacement. I'm going to say when you find an open parentheses, replace it with nothing. Also, when you find a closed parentheses, replace it with nothing. On this example, there's not a comma, but I know that I don't want any commas in here. I have a preview of what's being captured listed below, and I can click through to make sure that they're all formatted the way that I'd like. And that looks good to me, so I'm going to save that and go to capture text preview. And now I'm able to see my reviews without any commas or any parentheses. That's one way to use content replacement. The second example I want to use is for this model. I just want to get the model number, and here I captured too much information and I want to change the way that it looks. So for model, I'm going to do the same thing where I go into refine capture text, and instead of doing contents replacement, I want to do a capture definition. Right now it's selecting all of this right here, and I can select the model information that I want to have. The example that I just showed you, I would say is fairly reliable, but I'd always recommend to, when you want to isolate the target text, to use more phrasing than just maybe a colon or a comma or a space. Sometimes that's all you can do. But I'm going to type model colon, and I'm going to say I want to capture everything until there's a space, and then I want to save it. So now my format is only showing my model number. But there's also that SKU number there, and I want to see if I can capture that as well. So my first definition is saying capture this model. I can add another one, and because of those percentage signs, that tells me what a field is, my field name is. So I'm going to create a second one called SKU. And I want SKU to be everything from the letters SKU to the end of the line. And then I can save that expression. So now I have my model number, my SKU number, my URL, I'm getting my images, and it looks pretty clean. There's still some missing pieces of information, so when I go into the second page, I could potentially pick up that model number and that SKU number in order to get the information I need. We're going to dive into a little bit harder of an example. When it comes to agent building, the more you practice something, the better you'll become. And while this is loading, just to lay some of the foundation for next week, with the percentage signs that we have for that field expression, we're just using straight capture definitions. Everything that we wrote could be written in regular expression to specify that same information that we did before. So we're going to jump to the CentOS. And in this example, I wanted to, or I guess in any example, one of the reasons that this is important is to know what type of format you want to have your data in the end. I compare it to when you build a house. If you've ever tried to do that with a spouse and you have a discussion, or maybe it's with the builder themselves, and you describe the home that you want. You want tall ceilings, you want to have big windows, and you just want it to be open, and in your mind you're picturing this modern home that has clean lines, and then when you get to the designer, if you're not specific in what you need, you may end up with something similar to a log cabin if you don't specify otherwise. So as you're working with your team and you're discussing who may need that information that you have, be mindful of the format that they need it in. This is going to help you be able to transfer this data across different departments fairly easily. So right now, I've already captured my URL. Just for practice, we're going to try it one more time. So I want to use my node property selector to capture this URL. I'm going to capture this text where I believe the URL is. And I'm going to go to properties, node property selector, and select the URL. This same process can be done, and you guys may be familiar with this. If I switch this from text to HTML, I can write specific specifications for my target text. So in this example, if I write href equals quotes, end quotes, then I did the same task of doing the node property selector. The difference is just how I got there. So I like using, I'm going to switch it back to text, and I'm going to just call this URL2 and use my node property selector and select that URL. When I also want the color of all these products, and when I was clicking on them, I noticed that when I captured these as colors, I got them all back as numbers. And I want to know specifically what the colors are, because the colors may change the price, it may change the SKU number. That's important information for me. I could capture these as a list. That would show it multiple times in a row. Something that I want to do is make sure that I have each color listed as, well, looks like I got rid of one. I have each color listed on its own line. So we're going to make sure that this XPath is great. So when I'm writing my, when I'm working with these different examples with colors, I know that visibly it's just this number. I'm going to go into the HTML to see if there's something specific where I can find the color. And right now, the location that I'm at is putting me right here on this attribute 167. And right above that is where this red is. I could write an XPath that would say data swatch value equals red, but this color may be changing. So I'm going to use this as my location if I'm not able to select that from this node properties. So I'm going to right click, go to properties, select. And right now there's not an example where it doesn't give me the option to select red. So I'm going to change the location of where I'm looking by writing an XPath. I'm going to say look for the label that's called color swatch. And I'm going to replace this, and I want to find the first one. And I'm going to replace this one as well and say I want to find the second one. And then the third one. There's some items that have multiple colors, so I was able to add these additional lines, and I set them as optional just because I know that if they don't have any, if they didn't find one of those options, then I'm able to know, like, okay, I don't need to have this, it's not a mistake, it's something that's written inside of my, the product doesn't have those colors. So we're going to go back to our properties. We're going to select this, and now when I pull up the node property selector, the text content is showing the color specifically. So I can choose red there and press OK and save. And we'll do the following to each of the items. Let's look, you'll notice when I clicked on this fourth color, it didn't give me an option to select what color I wanted. And that's because it doesn't see a visible color for me to practice that on. So when I get to another example where it has more than two colors, then that will be a good example to use for that. So I'm going to test this and start. And it's getting the text better. And so on the products that are popping up, I can see that they don't have a color, and that's why they're not listing the colors below. We're going to do some reformatting as well when it comes to, we're going to try the same example, but use an example with Gap where the colors are hidden, but instead of having the colors all on a separate line, I want them all in the same format. So let's open up that as another example to walk through. So for this example, we have, I want to make sure that I have all of my colors, all of my fit, all of my sizes documented. I could do this in a list. Something that they require or that they have asked is that it all be on one line so that I don't have multiple lines for one item. They want to have it all just together. So for price, I captured my price, and for color, I have these three specific items. You notice that they're all in one line. When I capture this, I could try and capture it all together. But one trick to do if you want to capture all of the information and put them into one line is to use what's called a pipe delimiter, or just which creates a union between the items. So with our color example, I was listing which number of color that was. And here I've written in XPath to find this specific label. And then I've copied and pasted that twice. So if we copy our XPath, go into the DevTools and search for that, I'm able to see that I have the color swatch. And when I add a union, and then put it in again, it's going to be selecting all three of those items and putting them together. I did the same thing for fit, where I wrote an XPath to get to this location, and then separated it with a pipe delimiter, which is saying or, and. So it's saying look for anything that has this XPath or this XPath and put them if it's the same, then put them all together into one format. In this captured text preview, I have the color, fit, and size all listed out. I'm going to go in with Refine Capture Text because right now I have them all in a line, but I want to make sure that I have them formatted so I can see the difference between the colors. Because I already have what I want defined, it's saying you have all of these colors. I'm going to switch to Contents Replacements, click New, and select Text Replacement. I'm going to say anytime that you have a new line, I want to replace that with a pipe and save. Now each of my colors is separated by a different pipe, so I can tell that there's a different color being selected, but it's all in one line. We're going to do the same thing for fit. And again, they're all on new lines, so I'm going to do a text replacement, say when there's a new line, add this bar and click save. Same for size. Whenever there's a new line, it changed it so it's all formatted onto one line. If I was to export this without removing that extra white space, the way that it would appear inside my Excel document is to have them all on a new line, just like it's presented here. So it squishes it for spacing, but when you export it, they'll all be on their own line. So if that's a format that you want, that's fantastic. I've seen this really helpful when it comes to paragraphs and formatting. If you're getting descriptions and it has bullet points and you need that formatting for to transfer that to another location, then just keep the format that you have. And when you export it finally, then it will keep that same spacing. We're going to do a text replacement. I'm going to add that pipe delimiter and click save. And now we have our color, fit, and size. We're going to delete this price option and we're going to capture it one more time. When you capture something like price or phone number or address, well, Zendesk pretty smart and it can recognize when you are capturing something that it's familiar with. So it's detecting that you're capturing price, and it has this capture price without currency, capture price with currency. If I didn't select any of these and just typed price, it would just present the text as is. But with Refine Capture Text, we're able to change the format that we need. We're going to change this definitions. Instead of just showing price, I want to add one of these canned or predefined expressions. So one of these expressions is for price and price with symbol. This is in a format called regular expressions. It sets specific parameters to look for. So in this case, it's looking for any of these $ amounts, and then it's making sure that it has a specific number of digits before a dot, and then adding 2 digits at the end. If this looks like a foreign language to you, that's okay. It is a new language. Well, it's not a new language, it's a language to parse out that information. Each one of these symbols have a different value and meaning. This allows you to basically take like a surgical knife and just cut out specifically what information you need. This is so helpful when it comes to paragraphs, or if you have some weird formatting, when these predefined expressions don't work for you. I'm going to do, if you want to delete any of them, you are more than welcome to. I'm going to change this out of regular expressions, and it will just switch it back to that price. So those two are synonymous to each other. I'm going to do price with, I wanted to do without symbol. And I'm going to save that. It doesn't like that response, and so we can go into contents replacement, and I'm going to say anytime that you see a $, I want you to replace it with nothing. And now we're able to find it. Let's go over 2 more use cases together. The more examples we can see, the better. This one is related to PetSmart. I want to find out where each location is, and I want to be able to see if there's what the specific hours are for that day. I'm going to be running this on a schedule. I want to know if they change on just a weekly basis, because I'm very concerned about my pet's health. So, and he loves the toys. My dog is so grumpy, I don't think I would ever take him to any type of store. So we're going to, I want to make sure that this is in the correct format though. Right now it's formatted to have 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. I would need to make sure that I have this with the hours and the minutes included. So I want to make sure that this is formatted to have if it starts right on the hour or not. Additionally, I don't want today to say today. I want today to say Thursday, because whenever I run this agent, it's going to be on a Thursday. Another thing that is important to me is that this address is in the right format. So if there's part 2 of an address or a suite number, that's documented, and all the phone numbers are in the right format. So I'm going to open up the agent that we've built. I've spoken to so many of you who have had a great experience using that refined capture text, where it like amazes me everything that you guys are able to accomplish. One of the things that I was working with a team member or a customer, it was a customer this week, was we were capturing information, but there was another field that we needed to ignore in our refined capture text. So we were able to add an ignore field that ignored that content and gave me what was listed after it. I'll show you some examples of that as well. But in this next week, practice, find a site where you want to change the format. Maybe you want to make it look prettier. Find a site that you can play with as well. I've added a set user input for Washington, and it clicks the item, and then it goes through and selects each one of these locations. I realize I could get the information on just on this front page, and maybe we'll do that as well. Do you know what? Let's do it. So here we have our location. I want to capture these hours. So I'm going to capture this text and hours of operation and click save. Right now, it's only capturing that one item. I want to have these all on the same line. If I didn't want to have them all on the same line and I wanted each day to be a different line item, I could capture this as a list. And now it's showing me the hours for every single day. But it's also getting this store details and events get direction. So that is a possibility. Again, it depends on the format that you want. If this is something that's going to be important to you to have a new line, then I would recommend doing a list. I'm going to delete that. We're going to go back to just capturing this text. We can have all of these hours listed on one line. If I take this XPath, I'm going to copy it, go into the DevTools, select anywhere, Control F to find where my XPath is located. You notice that when I click search, it's not able to find where I'm at. And when we're using a list, it uses this first XPath from begin item list. So I'm going to take that and put it in front of it. And we were able to find those store location hours. I want to make this a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to rewrite this XPath. And we're going to use this result hours, or the store locator store details result hours. Okay, we'll use that. I'm using this as my identifier because each one of these items has that listed where the hours are. So I'm going to say search for a div that contains the class of these results. And I may need to get more granular, so I'm going to copy this and identify. I need to go down here, which is going to be, I need to go up to the parent, up to the parent, up one more time, and now I was able to find those hours. I believe one of the reasons why I did go through the second page was because there was less XPaths to worry about. Let's see how that turned out. So we still have one. We're going to add our pipe delimiter and then paste it again. So if that's the case, we'll just go to the next page. But it looks like it's working right now. And that looks so messy. I think if you got that in a report, I think my heart would cry. So we're going to refine capture text, and we want to do some contents replacements. So I'm going to say, I want to replace today with Thursday. I also want to replace, you'll notice that this today didn't register Thursday. This is case sensitive, so make sure that you type it in to match it exactly. I also want to find, whenever I find a new line, I want it to be replaced with a pipe delimiter. And I want to, I have these canned responses, so I can remove any extra white space, remove any line breaks, decode the HTML encode characters. The one that I see being used quite a bit is remove extra white space, text replacement, or if you need to remove the HTML tags to get into something more granular. We want to change the format where anytime we find an AM, I want it to be replaced with this. So now I have 9 AM. And anytime I find PM, I want it to be replaced with a colon, 2 zeros, and a PM. And click save. So now it's formatted a little bit more readable, and it will be easier to segment out. Here comes the fun part, which is the address. So we're going to capture this whole address text. At first I'm trying to capture like just these one lines, and I could capture this and say address, capture text. I could do city. But if you notice, this one was not very friendly. When I captured it, it gave me the city, it gave me the state, and it gave me the zip code. And I want to find a better way to do it. So I'm going to delete my address, delete my city. I'm sure if I was more specific and more careful, I could just get that, separate them all out, but I don't even want to have to worry about that. I'm going to highlight this box. I'm going to capture text. Remember, Mozenda can recognize actions that you're trying to execute, and it's saying, I see some things that are formatted in an address, and I also see something that has the phone number. So I'm going to click save. Now it has formatted it to address, city, state, zip, and phone number. Let's go in and see what that looks like. So we're going to go to refine capture text. This text is showing me everything that is selected. So it's including the hours, it's including the store details and events. That's all the content that is there. My definitions, though, is where it gets interesting. It's using regular expressions. You'll see it says address, city, state, And it's giving different examples of what an address would look like. If it has a PO box, if it has a suite number, it's going to change based off of that format. Additionally, at the very end, you can see it's looking for these phone numbers, and it's saying look for 3 digits, 5, and then you're done. And it's taking into account that maybe not all phone numbers have those parentheses, and so we're able to account for that error. When you are using definitions, this can be really helpful. If I'm looking for a specific group of texts that have 5 characters, then I can specify look for 5 characters and return that back to me. If it doesn't have 5 characters, I don't want to see it. To make sure that you're always notified and that your agent will error for you, you can go into Properties, Error Handling, and select Ignore Data Not Captured Errors. Unselect that, so that anytime it doesn't capture exactly what you told it to, it will hit an error. We're going to test this one more time. So we can see our results come in. I could take out those quotes. It looks like it found those 2 locations here in orange. So that was very exciting. When we have our phone number here, if I want to remove those quotes or those dashes, then again, it would be back into that refined capture text and removing those dashes as well. We've gone through some examples that are pretty helpful. We're able to we are able to walk through how to use a node property, how to refine capture text and do replacement. We have used a pipe delimiter to get more than just one item on a line. Now, I want to do an example. All of these work really great, and that's fantastic to show, but we need to have examples that are also hard, because when we are working on the agents, and there's not maybe a person that's walking through it with you, it can be really frustrating and it doesn't always work very nicely. So I'm going to pull up our good friend Yelp. Yelp has addresses, and they're formatted differently, and they can be used, and they're not always pretty to capture. I should note that all of our canned definitions for address and phone number is for an American address. So if you are using an address capture and it's in a foreign country, then I would recommend, foreign to me, I would recommend making sure that you write your own definitions to capture those. Here we're going to capture the restaurant name, URL, and then we're going to capture the address, phone number, and reviews. We're going to build this one from scratch so we can experience it all. We had a question come in about the how to use refine capture text when you are capturing maybe a block of text. I've seen this being used when it comes to if you're getting a description, maybe it's specific to an article, maybe it is a resume, or maybe it's just an informational document that you need to parse through. One of the ways to use it with our filled expressions that we have is finding a consistent pattern or landmark to identify, or looking at the HTML to recognize if there's any patterns, if they have any breaks that we can use to identify where to look for that information. Using regular expressions to identify those will help us be more specific so that because when we use refine capture text, it's looking for the first instance of the character that we wrote and then using that to target the text that we want. When we have our example next week, we'll be using this Yelp as well as another technical site and seeing how these all correlate to regular expression. So I'm going to capture this list. We're going to use, oops, I don't want sponsored items. So we're going to capture this list with no sponsored items. Then I want to capture the URL. I'm going to right click and inspect to make sure that it is located there. And it looks like it should be. I'm going to copy and paste that location that I had before and just retitle it URL and select, make sure you get this URL and make sure that you actually capture the URL. I could get the URL or the address from this page, but I'm wondering if I go directly in, if it would be formatted easier, and the phone number is listed right there. So we're going to add an action, load a new page, and have this be the URL. The load URL function is really great for sites that take a while to load when you click on them. Ooh. And I'm wondering, those first two items are having, it wasn't able to find the URL perfectly. So I'm going to drag this load URL and put it in my list to see if that will change it. Let's execute that. And modify this with refine capture text. Okay, so those first two are not very friendly. For our time, we're just going to do a click item. And here I'm going to capture the address. And I'm going to capture these hours. Take that same XPath, put it there again. And then we're going to change the format of those hours to replace it, a new line with a pipe delimiter. And click save. And I'm just going to leave it there and test it. We'll be capturing the reviews as well. So let me just test it and see how it's working and if that works for all of the items that we're looking for. We use the pre-defined expressions to find the address. And I'm looking at it so far and it looks like it's working fairly well. Let's see how it continues to run. Noticing on this item, it just says San Francisco, California, and it just hit an error. So the format changed, and so it's not able to find this, even though I I have my location set right, the phone number's there. And so something I could do is right click and change my location, adding an alternate and saying, look at this phone number, this address. I want you to add an alternate location, just look for it here. But I want to make sure that it's always following the format I say. So I'm going to test it again and resume, see if that fixed it. And if it doesn't, that's okay, because we can write something specific to look for that San Francisco, California, and it's still hitting an error there. We'll also be capturing this list of reviews. So we'll use some refined capture text next week. When we are using regular expressions, I want to be able to say here on this specific example, I want to say when there's a city, just capture the city and the state and the zip code. And with the predefined or the canned expressions that we have now, it just wouldn't find that. And we're lucky it's been able to find so many. So some of the use cases that we use are refined capture text or node property is to change the format, to specify a certain format that we do want or change so that we can have targeted data. Also to make sure that it error handles properly so that I can see if there's something important I need to note, if it's capturing the address in a funky format, or if I need to make sure that it has a certain number of digits or information there. With today's training, I just really appreciate all your participants. We have quite a large crowd here today. You guys have sent in some awesome questions. If there's any more, please feel free to chat them to me as well. And a recording of this will be sent out to all of you about an hour after our training is done. And then our next session will be next Thursday at the same time. If you guys have a preference on the time of day, please chat that in. We are making sure that it's at a good time, not just for some of our customers, but all of our customers. And if there's a certain topic that you want to hear, please let us know. But I appreciate all of your great work and look forward to talking to you next week. Thank you guys so much.